welcome to the State of the City, brought to you by Monterey Commercial Property Owners Association. I want to thank our sponsors, first of all, Alvarado Street Brewery, the Monterey Chamber of Commerce, the Lighthouse District, and also the Old Monterey Business Association. Thank you very much to our sponsors. And thank you for everybody for attending, especially our esteemed mayor and our trusted and valued city manager. This is an annual event for MCPOA to carry on with the State of the City. It's such a great place to watch do its work. It's such a monumental city in the history of California and the West Coast. As I've said before, it's just by living here and by being involved in what happens here, we all share in the responsibility of the treasure in which we live, which is the city of Monterey and the Monterey Peninsula. Nobody knows that better than a son of California, Clyde Roberson. Thank you for being here, Mayor, and also City Manager Hans Uslar. Thank you for being here as well. Hans Uslar, you first came here in 1990, as we all know, to attend the Naval Postgraduate School. As I recall, I believe you were an officer in the German Army, having served on the German ship, the Hermelin, is known for its speed and a tier 1 type ship. Coming here in 1990 as a Naval Postgraduate School student, we can only imagine what it must have been like for you and how much you must have reveled in being here. Quickly in 1997, you came over to the city of Monterey and have just the cream rises to the top. And thank you for being our city manager. In 2018, we're blessed to have you take over that position as the city manager. And along with your achievements there, we have to thank you for the Monterey model, along with others. You were intimate in developing by having a hand in both the Naval Postgraduate School and how the city operated. You were the perfect person in the perfect place at the perfect time to bring something very good to the forefront. Thank you for what you've done. We'll be hearing from Hans in just a moment, but we're going to have the honor of starting with Mayor Clyde Roberson tonight. Son of California, born in Oakland, California. Lucky you, Mayor Roberson. Lucky us that you came down here. You were a teacher in the school districts here for 35 years, but as important, your breadth has led to you 26 years as a city council member, 6 terms as the mayor. And I look every day as I walk in the sports center and I see the plaque out front that thanks you, Mayor Clyde Roberson, for your personal work in putting that gem in place. It's just one of those signs of what can happen, what has happened here, and thank you for your leadership over the many, many years. If I may, I'll turn the microphone over to you, Mayor Clyde Roberson, and the State of the City of Monterey. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, John, thank you for your kind words. And I'm going to turn some kind words towards John Tilley. John participates in public forums. And John, I appreciate how polite you are, respectful that you are. And if there's difference of opinions, you thank everyone for their participation, but you make it very clear what you think of what you stand for. But it's always with great class. You really are a role model, and I mean that. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, hello, everyone. Here we go for the State of the City. What a wonderful city to be the mayor of. Dan Albert, who is the mayor of Monterey for 20 straight years. I still admire that he was able to do that with the number of public hearings that he went to. Always said, it's a wonderful day to be the mayor of Monterey. And so I would absolutely agree with that. And so State of the City, it's a little bit different. One of the things I've been wrestling with, and I'm sure all of us who are in attendance do that as well, and that is the definition of the new normal. And so it appears that Omicron is behind us, but do we know what's going to happen in the future? I have an acquaintance who recently sold a business and no longer is going to have a brick and mortar business because most of the business is going to be online. So we know that's sort of thing is going everywhere. What is the new normal going to look like? Well, in the city, I can tell you that one of the things that has guided me, and as an elementary school teacher for 35 years, as well as being on the city council, are the quadrants by Covey. And I'm sure many of you, if not all of you who are watching, whatever field you're in, an elected or educator, a banker, essential workers, and public employees, private enterprise, all have this whole idea of what do you do with your time management. And so Covey developed some quadrants, and there were 4 of them. And this was really helpful to me when I first saw it when I took a teacher training class years ago. And quadrant 1 is you have issues or requirements or priorities. And quadrant 1 is urgent and important. You do it. Quadrant 2 is it's not urgent, but it's important, so you plan. And I will relate this a little bit as I go forward. And then there's quadrant 3, urgent, but not important. And that's one that takes quite a bit, I think, of discretion and wisdom. So if it's urgent and not important, delegate it. Then finally, quadrant 4, not urgent and not important, eliminate. Quadrant 4 is a hard one to eliminate. And from a city viewpoint, almost everything our city does is in quadrant 1 because people have their priorities and their interests. So it's time management. How can our fantastic staff meet all of the demands that it's required to meet? And I think that's probably one of the biggest struggles, and it may be in your business or in your school or whatever office that you're in, time management. And again, the new normal has changed that whole quadrant. I want to just quickly outline the departments of the city, just as a review. And my next step after that is I'm going to be talking about the vision and mission statement and value drivers of the city. And that sounds a little bit dry. So any of you have done strategic plans, you know they can be, but I wanted just to point out briefly in a moment, what do these value drivers mean? What's going on in your city? What is the state of your city? Of course, we have the city manager's office. And John, thank you for acknowledging Hans Uslar. He truly was a blessing to be our city manager during the COVID crisis. And our assistant city manager, Nat Rojanasa-Thira, who's also supervises some of the departments in our city. Our city attorney, Chrissy Davy, one of the best, if not the best city attorney anywhere. And our community development director, Kimberly Cole, and all of the planning. Many of you probably interact most with our planning and community development department. We're very pleased to have Rafaela King, who's joined us as our finance director, finances. We'll talk about that a little bit too. Our fire chief, Gaudens Panholzer, who's been with us quite a while, doing a great job. Human resources director, Allison Hawk, and Monterey Public Library and Museums Director, Ingo White, Parks and Recreation Director, Karen Larson, our police chief, Dave Hober, and our Public Works Director, Steve Witry. That's the core mission of our city, those outlines that I just gave you. So I'm switching from window to window, and so far I haven't lost anything. I have paper backup just in case. And so the city of Monterey just went through strategic planning. We spent almost 2 full days and went through a definition of our vision, our mission, and value drivers, strategic priorities, and staff work items. And so our vision statement in the city is that Monterey is a beautiful, special place to live, work, and visit. ANDA. And that alone says a lot about our city. The fact that it's beautiful. I am so grateful to live here, and we know we are a major work hub for the peninsula, and obviously with lots of visitors. When we walked the trail, we did it earlier today, just amazing how many people are visiting our city right in the middle of February. Then our mission statement is in partnership with our entire community. The Monterey City Council provides visionary leadership in ensuring a safe, healthy, historic, economically vibrant, and sustainable environment. So these are always good and lofty goals. How do they translate to everyday life? I'm going to probably want to talk maybe 10 minutes max. So I'm going to be whipping through 9 value drivers, each of which could easily take a 1-hour meeting, if not more. So value driver 1, in collaboration with our community partners, work to improve the quality of life of all of our community members by fostering diversity, equity, and inclusion, championing equitable access to affordable housing, and maintaining a safe environment. Well, what does that mean in the everyday world? Over the last year, the city has really concentrated on meeting the demands of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that's through our emergency operations, delivering vaccines, testing, issuing emergency orders, following the protocols, adopting eviction protections, hosting blood drives, and providing food security. So all of those, that list that I have just provided was done by our city staff. The fire department has stepped up. You see them every Tuesday night at Farmers Market. Our Parks and Recreation Division became very active with the food bank and distributing meals. And then our police department, very much out working, serving the city. We have a model of community policing, and we all know about our CAT and MDOT teams, and especially their outreach to the homeless. I had a friend of mine who did a drive around with the police, and he told me that he had no idea that the police interacted with our homeless community so much and so well and so politely and with such empathy. That says a lot about our police departments and our fire departments. We are replacing 2 fire engines. So why do I bring that up? Well, each one costs about $1 million. And so that's something that doesn't hit the headlines, but without those, obviously we can't meet the needs of our city. I would point out, if you haven't done it, it's something I'm going to do here, I hope soon, and that's CERT training, where we have community members who are involved in helping during emergencies. As you remember, when we had the tsunami warning, they were there ready to go. Another big issue in this value driver is fuel reduction. I read today, and I just could hardly believe it, that there are wildfires throughout the world, much more than we've ever had. And there may be some in the Arctic. Now, I really had to wrap my head around that one, but if you have melting ice and you have a tundra, can you imagine fuel reduction and firefighting in the Arctic? And of course, when we had the fire down by Bixby Creek Bridge in January, that of course was a wake-up call as well. And so as part of the wellness of the city and our inhabitants, we're obviously opening up our centers again. The Monterey Sports Center, which you mentioned, John, is coming back. And also we have to think about our youth and adult sports camps and leagues, also our community centers, which really do help with essential workers because they provide a lot of childcare for people who have no other alternatives at a very reasonable cost. So we're hoping everything comes back because it's all interrelated. Then of course, there's our Monterey Public Library, constantly reaching out, and they have a few baskets, by the way, for wine and chocolate. They didn't ask me to put in the pitch, but I think I'd better. Then of course, we have our neighborhoods, still very interested, still very active. One of the things we're concentrating on is the Laguna Grande Regional Park and how we can make that safe and restore it. And of course, there's our regional partners and how to work with other people in our region, looking at our North Fremont and trying to revitalize North Fremont corridor. Then finally, the Neighborhood and Community Improvement Program. That was a program that the city did suspend last year because of our $32 million hit to our budget. And so we're coming back strong. The NCI members, CIP members are meeting. I have a chance to watch their meetings. They do such an extraordinarily a lot of work that you have to see it to believe how much they do for their community because they love it. Value driver 2, and I won't take as long as some of the others. Our value driver 2 is to protect and preserve our natural environment by addressing climate change through ecologically responsible and pragmatic solutions. This is something that's constantly on my mind. We just read that we are in the worst mega drought in 1,200 years. That's certainly an eye opener. And then we read that sea level rise is increasing at an exponential amount, more than we ever would thought. And take a look at much of our downtown is in the sea level rise and flood zone. So that's certainly something we as a city and all of us who have any kind of property in the flood zone have to be thinking about. So we're looking forward to making our contribution to the reduction in climate warming. Value driver 3 is serve as stewards of the city's financial resources through sound economic vitality efforts, streamlining operations, reasonable revenue enhancements, visionary long planning, fiscal transparency, and community partnerships. Again, those are really good words. Well, what does that mean? Well, I'm very grateful that the voters reapproved Measure P as Measure S. So that 1 cent can go to the improvement of our roads, our infrastructure. The voters did approve a 1/2 cent sales tax increase and a TOT increase. Without those, we probably would not be able to really sustain what we're doing. And going forward, we have made a promise to the voters that we are going to restore lost services. That's what a city is all about. And be very, very careful about starting any new programs because we have so many things on our plate that we absolutely have to take care of. We need city reserves. We do have about a 17% fund for economic uncertainty. And we could go through that in a heartbeat, as you know, if we have another shelter in place. We've been through the conference center and learned that lesson where we need to put money aside so we don't have to float a bond every 30 years to rebuild it. The same with the sports center. And it's very important, of course, to support our business community that pays those taxes for us as well as our residents. And of course, we have excellent partnerships with our military installations as well. So one of the questions that was asked at one of our meetings by our city manager was, Council, what are your priorities? At which time I said, well, probably budget has to be number 1 because without a sound fiscal policy, without a sound budget, nothing else happens. And I hope that doesn't just sound too mundane and too basic, but we really do have to have prudent expenditures and we have to start taking care of our aging infrastructure. Then of course, we want to keep up with technology as well. You take a look at the Ukraine, it was so fascinating that the first part of a potential Russian invasion was disrupting their internet and their technology, a new kind of warfare. I thought that was absolutely interesting, and we're all vulnerable, as we know. So that's an important part of the city too. Value driver 4 is to provide sufficient resources and support to develop, retain, and recruit a high quality workforce. We're all facing that. Those of how many help wanted signs do we see? And it's just very important to me as the mayor, our council, our staff, management staff, to keep the excellent people that work for us, because there are a lot of folks out there who want to take them, especially in public safety. That's getting more difficult to staff. And so that's really important. In most organizations, 85 to 90% of their budget, it goes to personnel and salaries. But that makes sense because you've got they're the ones who provide the services. They're the ones that you see every day. So we can have a sports center, but if it isn't staffed, it's just an empty building. Value driver 5 is to champion regional and local efforts to secure adequate, affordable, and sustainable water sources for the city now and into the future. I said each of these value drivers could take an hour, where that particular value driver could probably take months, if not years. When I ran for re-election for mayor in 1985, the primary issue was affordable housing. That's almost 40 years ago. And at that time, we were looking at Fort Ord as a potential source of affordable housing because there's lots of land. And some of that isn't turning out. You can go out to Sea Haven right now and buy a nice 2,000 square foot home for $1 million. That's not a criticism. It's simply a question of this whole housing is a really tough one, and so is water. So I won't get into that one too much unless people want to ask about it. Then, of course, affordable housing. I'm very proud to have been on the council over the years when we first adopted inclusionary housing. One of the most pleasurable things I do as mayor is I sign the escrow papers when a city-owned home is sold under our inclusionary housing restricted program. I just signed one where someone got a nice little unit in an apartment complex, a condo complex, for $200,000 because it's restricted. We have over 500 of those. We're also looking forward to, we've done some rezoning in East Downtown and Garden Road to make way for more housing opportunities. And also, my example of my friend who no longer has a commercial building, probably we're going to be looking at some of those for potential housing. We just, the council just passed a resolution allowing for, in certain cases, housing on the ground floor in commercial areas, because we may be having a great deal of empty office and commercial space out there under the new normal. Value driver 7, expand opportunities for people of all ages and abilities to bike and walk safely through active transportation, accessibility, and safety initiatives. I just upgraded my e-bike. I recommend it to everybody. It's an absolutely wonderful way to go. And I did mention Measure P&S, where we're getting our streets, sidewalks, and storm drains and ADA improved. So it's our hope at the end of that tax, which should be about 6 years from now, our entire city will have been redone. Value driver 8, 2 more folks. Preserve, promote, and maintain our city's historic and cultural resources through responsible stewardship and historic preservation that highlights the contributions and perspectives of all people who are part of Monterey's diverse history. So we're very much working on social justice and equity framework throughout the city. And we want to acknowledge all of the people who were here before. And part of that is to protect and to highlight Monterey's maritime history as well. Then finally, value driver 9, foster a local government that is transparent and collaborative and solicits, welcomes, and appreciates input from all. And over the last year, our city has worked really hard. We've had a city focus. I started that years ago. That's when everything was paper and it comes out electronically. You see our daily updates. The city's website is absolutely incredible. And I thank Lori Huelga and her department for making all of that happen. So there's really a great deal, a cornucopia of information on our website, monterey.org. So that's kind of a quick overview of what's going on in the city. I hope I've made some of these value drivers something that you could relate to, something that impacts your life. So going forward, I look forward to working with you to decide what the new normal is going to be. And it's very important to me to keep Monterey scenic, safe, and solvent. We wake up every morning, look out the window. My wife and I are so grateful to be able to live in our city. I was thinking the other day to add to safe, scenic, and solvent, add the word sane, because the world out there is, it's a little bit COVID crazy, if is the best term I could put. But I'm just very pleased that our small city is able to have all of the amenities that it does. And so in conclusion, people ask, why have I done this for 41 years? And I love Monterey, and I will take care of it with you. Thank you for your time and your listening.
Thank you, Mayor. Well said. Really enjoyable to hear you speak. A lot of good key points there. I think the outline you just used was a really good one. I'd like to urge, thank you again, Mayor. I'd like to urge anybody who's in attendance, if you have questions, to enter them into the chat function. If there is time by the 6 o'clock close, we'll have some questions to ask. If you have any, put them into the chat. Both the mayor and I will be exiting right about 6 o'clock. There's a water district meeting tonight. Moving along then to City Manager Hans Uslar, we'll look for an update as to what has occurred in the city since we last had a State of the City a year ago. I expect you want to cover the budget, and if your expert view could help us understand more about districting, that would be very helpful as well, plus anything else you care to cover. Thank you so much, Mayor, for your presentation, and thank you, City Manager Uslar, for being here. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you very much for inviting me. And McPoy has been hosting the State of the City's address for so many years, even decades. I recall watching Mayor Dan Albert and former City Manager Fred Muir, the latter one is watching me on Zoom, I just saw, presenting in the conference center this important event, or in the Ferranti room, or in the Portola Hotel and Spa. Today, Mayor Clyde and I are very much honored to share with you and the participating public our assessment of the state of the city. Mayor Clyde just spoke about our updated vision, mission, and value drivers. What I'd like you to understand is that beneath those value drivers are more than 160 separate work programs that staff is tracking. We were lean before the pandemic in our staff organization, but today it's even more important that we allocate our resources to those important work programs. The vision, mission, and value drivers, they will just do that. They will help us to stay focused. And also thanks to Mayor Clyde for his leadership when we defined all that. His wisdom and insights were very helpful for all of us. So what has happened since the last time I spoke to you all in January 2021? Clearly, the Omicron spike is coming to an end. The mayor mentioned it as well, and cases going down as rapidly as they initially shot up. The governor has declared an end to the mask mandate with a few exceptions. And our state is also the first state in the nation to have developed a post-pandemic plan, which our friends in Sacramento humbly called SMARTER. I think it's fair to say that we are all a bit fatigued about the ebbs and flows of the pandemic. In Monterey today, it is easier to find a job, even a well-paid job. Our hotels and restaurants and shops are back in business, and you see many of them having help wanted signs in the windows. We also see that the shoppers have returned to the brick and mortar stores, especially have returned to the Del Monte shopping center. However, inflation is at a 4-year high, rents are through the roof. So what do we see in our own economy here? We see that property tax have increased. But what does it mean? That locals are getting more and more priced out, while other residents are cashing out and leaving the area. With the 1 block radius of my home here in New Monterey, 2 properties, nicely maintained, both single wall, 1-bedroom homes built in the 1930s, single bath, sold for $850,000 and almost $915,000 respectively. So the new neighbors that I welcome to the neighborhood are from the Bay Area, and they felt pretty damn good because they think they got a great deal of a home here. Our utility costs are equally getting higher. Calum is increasing the water rates. The PG&E cost increase was just sent out to all the mailboxes. Monterey One Water last year raised substantially the cost for sewer treatment. And what that does it mean? Our residents' discretionary spending is just decreasing, even if you have been lucky enough to get a pay raise. So supply chain problems, we can see that also in the city. We had problems finding tires for our fire engines. We had problems replacing our streetlight LEDs. They have the supply chain, though, is easing up. We are getting parts better now. Most economists believe that the inflation will come down. That doesn't mean necessarily it's a good feeling. War has returned to my native Europe, and Putin's invasion of Ukraine will have consequences in our economies here as well. So here's some Monterey economy metrics from my perspective. Hospitality industry is still one of our main industries, a significant employment sector, and will remain in the foreseeable future. Many of our restaurants are showing record revenues. One downtown restaurant had the best year ever in 2021 in their long history. On the wharf, we can see that 15 of 29 businesses exceeded their 2019 gross sales. It is fair to state that wharf sales are back to pre-pandemic levels. Cannery Row, shout out to Cannery Row watchers here. I saw them logged in as well, is equally back. And the reopening of the Monterey Bay Aquarium lifted all their boats out there. I can tell you in January that, which is month 7 out of 12 of our fiscal year, we have now collected about 90% of our projected annual hotel tax. And our original projection was not lowballed either. They were solidly based in the middle of 2 estimates calculated by 2 different reputable professional organizations. And so thanks also, and a shout out right now to the MCCVB and the CEO, Rob O'Keefe, and their Vice President for Finance, the forecasting wizard, Paul Martin. Their estimate is better than the revenue or the estimate of another reputable company. So the hotels are full. They have not returned to previous occupancy numbers, but they are able to charge higher rates, daily overnight rates. And what that means for us is that the hotel tax is up, way up. But what makes the difference for us is that we increased the hotel tax from 10 to 12%. That now favors our revenues as well. If I talk about the sales tax, I can only use one word. It came roaring back. And I use the term roaring back because it means to have great success after a period of lackluster performance, making a dramatic recovery. This is what we're seeing, a dramatic recovery in the sales tax. And here are some insights as well. As of the 4th quarter of 2021, here are the list of our top 25 sales producers. It's after the quake, Alvarado Street Brewery, the Apple Store, Bubba Gum, Chevron, CVS Pharmacy, Del Monte 76, El Torito, Fish Hopper, Hyatt Monterey, Lala Grill, M&S Building Supplies, Macy's, Mercedes-Benz, Mobil Station, Monterey Bay Aquarium, Monterey Plaza, Old Fisherman's Grotto, Rosine's, Sardine Factory, and Whole Foods. These are right now our top 25 sales tax producers. During the height of the pandemic, when hotels and the aquarium were closed, none of the hotels and nor the aquarium were on that list. So sales tax is roaring back. Yet, We got to be careful. Our tourism-based economy will remain vulnerable to the slightest changes caused by the pandemic. When the Omicron virus started, conferences for our conference center were again immediately canceled. If we think that we are back in charge, we are ignoring the most important lessons from my perspective. The virus is still in charge of determining how many people will fill up our hospitals and what measure will be taken. So last year, our city council approved a balanced budget, which we could only balance thanks to the American Rescue Plan Act. 2 installments of $3.25 million of rescue funds helped us to pass a balanced city budget. While $6.5 million were a great shot in the arm, they only represented 90% of our total revenue losses of $32 million. Stated differently, $26 million in losses were not covered by the federal help. A few other sobering numbers. In 2020, we eliminated 102 full-time positions. More than 70 employees were laid off. That was on top of laying off hundreds of part-time employees. We froze a number of positions, meaning we did not eliminate them, but we did not fund them. Our workforce shrank from around 500 employees to something about 360, 370 employees. And over the past 12 months, we were able to hire back about 35 employees, familiar faces who are now back on our campus delivering services to our community. The library is back open 5 days a week. Our sports center is open 7 days a week, and our conference center is open for business as well. But all 3 of our flagship operations have one thing in common. Our customer base has not returned to 2019 levels. Library patrons and sports center patrons have returned in smaller numbers than we had hoped for. For example, the sports center has seen a little over 40% of the users return when compared to 2019. The conference center business remains a bit shaky, and right now we are managing the existing conferences that we have with about 50% of the folks we had pre-pandemic. So here's a quick conclusion. Today's city's finances are favorable because we have a combination of 3 major factors. First, we raised sales tax and TOT in 2020. So by definition, return to normal means more. Second, tourists came back thirsty to satisfy pent-up demand. Boy, are they ready to spend the money. And lastly, operational expenses in the city, namely personnel costs, are still lower because fewer customers require fewer personnel in our key facilities and in some of our departments. So I can tell you we are looking at significant budget surpluses. Next Tuesday, it is our plan to propose to council to use some of those one-time budget surpluses to allocate them into various savings accounts. In detail, what we are proposing to council next week, Tuesday, is backfill our fiscal reserves. We spend money from our Fund for Economic Uncertainty. We are proposing to put $2.5 million back into the Fund for Economic Uncertainty. This will not only restore the fund to the required reserve levels, it will increase the fund to 18% of the general fund balance. Pre-pandemic, we spoke to the taxpayers also about that we have to get our act together with the city's pension obligations. We are proposing, following the example of the city of Carmel, to create a pension reserve fund and add $1 million as a starting capital into it. Our conference center $60 million remodel has been paid by the hotels and motels who have agreed to charge a surcharge to their hotel guests. It's now our obligation to ensure that we put sufficient funds aside. So we are proposing to the council as well to allocate $750,000 into a conference center facility reserve. Similarly, our sports center requires substantial upgrades. We are also proposing to put $750,000 into the sports center facility reserve as well. Lastly, and the mayor spoke about this briefly as well, IT, information technology, remains a huge cost factor for our city. The reason why we were successful in remaining open and switching to virtual services was because our technology was ready. We were proposing to allocate another $1.5 million towards a technology infrastructure fund, because we already know that next year we have to spend $2.5 million just to keep up with the technology and replace our aging servers and switches. Lastly, climate change. Climate change and sea level rise are challenges to our economy. They are challenges to people living in Monterey. We are proposing to start creating now a sea level rise resiliency reserve, putting $500,000 in there coming from the Tideland revenues. So over the course of the next couple of weeks and months, we will revise, based on the input of the City Council, those fiscal policy, and we will continue to create a mechanism to continue filling those reserves up as part of our annual budget. We will also add more personnel back. We will propose at the mid-year budget on Tuesday to restore 2 positions in our Parks and Rec department, which are used to create recreational programming. In other words, we didn't look at what comes first, chicken or the egg example, or the egg challenge. What we did is we will create the programs and hope the customers will come. Lastly, all 7 of our bargaining units are up for contract renewal. We have to create within our budgets fiscal flexibility to talk to our labor unions about cost of living adjustments. That also has to be addressed. What we are working on right now is to get a handle over the next 5 years. Our cost models have to be updated, and we have to adjust those numbers to really forecast where are we going for the next 5 years. So our hotel revenues are great, sales tax is great, and we are doing quite well. If you're interested, I ask you to join us next week, Tuesday at 7 p.m. at the council meeting, where we go in great detail over those numbers as well. I will talk briefly about 2 more topics, districting and housing and water. Census 2020 shows that Monterey rose to 30,218 residents. That's a number you should remember. Let's first talk about districting. We have restructured the city council election process over the past 90 days. So the city has created 4 new council districts. Those council districts will now in the future elect their respective council members. Only the mayor's position will remain an at-large position. So starting in November this year, 2 council members will be elected from 2 districts, and the mayor will be elected again as an at-large position. The main reason for the switch to the district-based election system can be found in the California Voting Rights Act legislation. And the intent of this legislation is to give minority voters a better chance to elect a candidate of their choice. And so we have done just that. We had a complex outreach campaign. We reached every single household twice through mailers. We held virtual town hall meetings. We used numerous daily emails that we sent out. Everything also was done in the Spanish language as well. In the end, the council voted to create a new map, and each district will have around 7,500 residents. That's why I ask you remember 30,000 number, because 4 times 7,500 is 30,000. So what changes do I see as a city manager in local politics? I think the idea of a district will be tempting for elected officials to think first of the district and then secondly about the city at large. After all, they get elected by a district. And you can already hear some of those sentiments during public comments. You also might see a few new candidates now running for office based on new themes, such as new local rental politics. Local politics might become more polarizing. For many years now, I've seen new council members get elected. Oftentimes they get into politics because they push for one issue or are motivated to address one topic they are very concerned about. But the moment they sit on the council dais and they start seeing the complexity of the city, at large elected council members start thinking as the city as in a large complex issue. And all of them have a light bulb moment when they come to the insight that the overall well-being of the city is at stake. So I fear that district-based candidates might need more time to realize Monterey's complexity. Why? Because district-based council members are more protected by the district-based voting system, which might make them care less for the bigger picture and what's best for the city as a whole. In other words, I think district-based candidates can afford to think less at large. Will that hurt the city? Well, my assessment is probably not. I think in the end, good local politics will prevail. As Mayor Clyde likes to say, we are here to take care of Monterey. And it's my hope that council members, regardless of which district they represent, will represent the interests of what's best for Monterey. For our city staff, not a lot will change, as we will continue to offer the best services possible to our residents and our businesses and visitors. So I ask you, stay tuned. From my side, I can tell you already that the first wave of running for office has already hit our shores. Even though no one has declared running for office, you can see signs clearly on the figurative wall coming to a lawn near you. So now let me talk about housing and water. I'm hopeful that 2020 will be a turning point for getting water for affordable housing. Over the past 12 months here in Monterey, our city council helped to create a perfect challenge for our state elected officials. Here's how. And I see it's 5:50, but I ask you to kindly stay with me a brief moment, because I need to talk briefly about Apple's founder, Steve Jobs. Why is that important? Steve Jobs was always known for his masterful product presentations. His unveiling of the iPhone or the iPad were legendary. But he always used a very simple outline of his presentations. He defined a problem, he told you who are the heroes, he told you who are the villains, and he showed you his iPhone products as the solution. So keep that in mind when I talk now about housing and water. The problem on our peninsula is that all housing projects need water. The more housing units can be built on a site. The more units can be built, the cheaper the cost per unit. And the less expensive a developer can build quality housing, the more affordable housing units he can have within his project. And yes, here in Monterey, we have housing developers who offer more than the required 20% of affordable housing units. Just a few weeks back, the Association of Monterey Bay Area Governments, AMBAG, set a new housing goal for the city of Monterey. We must zone for 3,654 more additional housing units. So if you think how many people will be per housing units, and the state number is 2.93, this will add about 10,700 more residents into our city, 10,700 more residents. So stated differently, the housing objective set by AMBAG, and more importantly, mandated by the state of California's Housing and Community Development Agency, will require between 350 to 450 acre-feet of water for the city of Monterey alone. And as of today, we have been told numerous times that we cannot get a single drop of additional water for new housing projects. Additionally, we in the city have created 4 prime commercial properties and designated them for affordable housing developments. The city is giving away 4 prime commercial properties. In line with the housing goals stated by our state elected officials and many other do-gooders, which is the properties are within walkable distance to dozens of large employers. They're close to public transportation. close to shops, restaurants, public service centers, close to our library, close to our sports center, close to the beaches. Monterey has the potential to build hundreds of affordable units today with little to zero opposition from concerned neighbors. There is no NIMBY. Back to Steve Jobs. So who's the hero? The heroes simply are the governor, I said it, the lawmakers, rolling out numerous pieces of housing legislation. Increasing affordable housing remains one of the highest priorities in the state. Senator Laird has become a vocal supporter for our water needs and affordable housing. Everywhere where you look, you see good intentions. The Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, which helps to quantify the housing needs, has applied a balanced metrics to get people into affordable housing. Local Monterey politics created new zoning layers, allowing multifamily housing, and local Monterey politics also gave us those 4 prime commercial real estate properties. Lastly, another hero is the Monterey Peninsula Water Management District. They have identified the water we could use for those identified housing developments. The water is there. Who are the villains? The State Water Resources Control Board and the California Coastal Commission are run by equally responsible technocratic bureaucrats who continue doing business as usual. Right now, it appears that they do not see a need for compromising. You have a failure of those agencies. They simply have stopped looking to find balances between humanitarian needs and to their own needs. They are quite frankly the villains right now in this story. They know what they want, and they apparently prioritize their missions about homelessness, overcrowded apartments, long commutes, and unaffordable rents. In essence, what we see here is bureaucrats doing the opposite what the elected officials want them to do, which is never a great recipe for success, at least not for me as city manager. So what is the solution? What is the successful ending? Here's the successful ending of the story. I believe that sooner or later, in the years 2022, those heroes and the villains will come together. Monterey's policies created a chess move. We created a move on the water chessboard that will lead to a checkmate. My hope is that the strong coalition that we have now with the governor, the state senate, HCD, Monterey Regional Water Management District, and the city, that we can move the needle forward to get projects approved and get projects built. So I think it's not really an iPhone moment, but I cannot see that failure will be an option. So the last minute or so, I will give you a quick lightning round, what else you can expect from City Hall. Last night, City Council decided not to pursue a rental registry. We will have further conversations about rent control, or as it's called also in new language, rent stabilization. Vaccine clinics, we will continue vaccine clinics. We have conducted over 120 vaccine clinics. We will continue doing that. Our police is implementing right now a new electronic records management at the tune of $500,000. Our IT system, we switched from Google Suite to Microsoft 365, saving about $140,000 a year in license fees. Lawsuits. We won a lawsuit in Bryce Morgan versus City of Monterey. Morgan asked the jury to award over $2.5 million. City won, recovered attorney costs and other costs in amount exceeding of $230,000. Our lawsuit against the Monterey Peninsula Airport District, a CEQA lawsuit, we prevailed in that CEQA lawsuit challenge as well, and we will be also seeking our attorney's fees back. Last but not least, one of our tenants, Discovery Charter, also went to the court with us. They are also asked by the Monterey County Court of the Superior Court of Monterey to reimburse the city for our attorney fees, which are also well over $250,000. Commercial cannabis, at mid-year point, the council might be looking already at implementing proposals. Wireless, over the next 4 to 6 months, we will bring this proposal or the wireless ordinance to the council for final approval. At the end of the year, you will see us building new parking areas or replacing existing parking areas in the waterfront. That's the waterfront parking lot project part 2. We relocated already the compactor room from the wharf into the waterfront. With that also, and the new management and the way we have set it up, wharf merchants save right now between 30 to 50% in refuse bills. Parks and Recreation, we will bring back Camp Kinsavet. We will bring back Whispering Pines. And last but not least, with the blessing of the council, we will start a campaign to find a funding mechanism to fund a new library and also a new public safety building. So, state of the city is good. Our city is returning back to normal. And let me revise that. Today I heard from Rob O'Keefe something very good, and I want to just borrow this thought from him. We are not returning back to normal. We are returning back to a better normal. So with that, thanks again for listening. Thank you, McPoor, for your continued partnership. We couldn't do it without the help of everyone listening tonight and with the help of all the organizations that support the city like McPoor. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager Uslar. Thank you, Mayor Clyde Roberson. This is a small, tight-knit community. We all do work hand in hand. We overlap a lot, and it has good results. I know that we didn't really have time tonight for Q&A. Thanks for hitting the points that you did. The questions were around housing. That is a very long discussion to have. But I want to thank everybody for attending. Shout out to Alvarado Street Brewery for coming in #1 in the tax collection ahead of Chevron. Well done. And, you know, that really does point to just what's happened in the city. Alvarado Street just by itself is vastly improved. And both of you have been in office and been running the city while that's happened. Thank you very much for your efforts every single day, year in, year out. And thank everybody for attending tonight. If you're not a member of McPoa, feel free. Monthly meetings, very informative. We tend to bring in people who have important points to make, like the mayor and the city manager. And it's a very informative situation. So if you're not a member of McPoa, please consider joining. And again, a shout out to our sponsors, and thank everybody for attending.